I'm going to introduce tonight's speaker. And tonight we're welcoming Sandra Fernandez. And Sandra is an Ecuadorian American artist whose work is rooted in the trans-border experiences of exile, dislocation, relocation, memory, and self-conscious identity construction and reconstruction. She has a multidisciplinary practice, and tonight she'll be focusing on her alternative process book projects, among others. So without any further ado, I'm going to turn it right over to Sandra.
Thank you, Dale. Let me start sharing my screen. Okay.
Looks good, Sandra.
Looks good. Great.
Yep. Oh, let me jump in real quick before you start and just, we talked about this before. Anyone who has any questions, you can put them in the chat, and if they're relevant to something on the screen, I'll relay them to Sandra. If it sounds like something that might spark a bigger discussion, I might hold them to the end, but feel free to put them in so we can have a bit of a conversation while she's presenting.
All right. Okay, well, it is such a pleasure to be here tonight. Thank you, Dale, for inviting me to be part of this series of these virtual talks. And thanks to everyone for attending this presentation. When I was thinking about, let me see here. When I was thinking about how to present this talk, it was challenging to depict my work only in terms of alternative processes, because in my practice, I'm not only a photographer, but I am an artist that perambulates with drawing, printmaking, artist books, fiber art, installation work, soft sculpture, et cetera, et cetera. But I should say that photography was my first love as a medium and how I began thinking about myself as an artist. Let me take you briefly through my beginnings before I talk more in depth about my use of alternative processes in my work. I was born in Queens, New York, and before I turned 1 year old, I moved to my mother's home country, Ecuador. I grew up in Quito and spent my formative years there. I returned to the United States before my 22nd birthday and have been living here since then. It is in Quito. Okay, my slide is not moving. Okay, it is in Quito that I fell in love with photography. I started taking pictures at a very young age, borrowing my mother's camera, an Olympus pen model that she had, taking mostly casual shots of family and friends. At 16, I bought my first camera, an Olympus OM10, and I even set up my first darkroom at home. I continued to take pictures, recording events and trips, but mostly as a hobby, as snapshots. When I moved to the United States as a young adult, I fell into the art path by destiny. Looking for a filmmaking program, I found a visual communications program at a local community college when I was living in Madison, Wisconsin. And that program allowed me to combine photography with video and to learn fine arts. One thing led to the other, and I ended up at the University of Wisconsin at Madison, getting a bachelor's degree and later an MFA degree. And that is where everything started. I never thought of myself as an artist. Let me go back one slide. When I was taking pictures in Ecuador, I always thought of it as a hobby and something I just loved to do, but I really didn't think about it as something greater. But when I went to school in the US, when I came to school in Madison, Wisconsin, I realized that it was actually an art form and I loved it. So I started taking classes and falling deeper in love with the medium. I concentrated solely on photography and started experimenting with it. At one point, the two-dimensional surface wasn't enough to express all I wanted to say. So I started adding things to the fiber-based surface, as you can see in this picture. So I was working with multi-negatives. Back then, there wasn't any Photoshop to do this kind of work. So I was using several negatives and doing multiple exposures. And that was actually the first time that I started exploring photography a little bit further. But even then, I felt that it wasn't enough for me to really tell a story. And you see to the left here, I started collaging things and sewing things onto the paper and just giving it a different dimension. One thing led to the other, and I discovered printmaking shortly after I was doing these experimentations with in the darkroom, and a whole new world opened up for me. I started trying out photo etching and any other way that would allow me to fixate images on paper. I was always interested in combining things, and the worm of printmaking already hit me, and I started just printing things over the paper and tearing the printed paper off. And from there is where my present work took form, took shape. Soon after, I was experimenting with photo etching. I was introduced to alternative processes, to non-silver processes. And that was another medium that really captivated me. And, soon after I added it to my repertoire. Dale, I think I have lost some of my images. Okay, let me just, give me 1 second. Okay, I had a slide here of my first work. Well, it doesn't matter. So after, so I'm introduced to non-silver photography and cyanotypes and Van Dyks, and really captivated me. I loved how they looked. I loved that I could use negatives and that I could use my collection of photographs that I had taken and to just put them on paper. And so a few years after, I worked with printings on paper surfaces, I started experimenting on other surfaces. I was very drawn to making three-dimensional objects and to creating different stories. And so I became interested in artist books, and this medium allowed me to combine all of my interests. And I continued, I actually took the road of artist books as containers and developed a whole series, which are the ones that the works that I'm going to talk about today mostly. This, I'm sorry, I cannot find the first image, but this will do. So I started developing these series that were about childhood memories and background histories, cultural histories. This work here is called Letters from My Dad. I grew up in Ecuador, and my father lived in the United States. So I collected a whole series of letters that he sent me. And this was the first work that I made talking about my relationship with him. I started experimenting with printing on wood, and I discovered that the wooden surface was so perfect for cyanotypes and Van Dyks, and this not only allowed me to create these containers, but to continue to other interests that I had, which were fiber-based. I loved working with paper. I wasn't that interested in working over fabric. I was always interested in extending the life of a print in terms of using paper as my base. And so I was printing on paper, then cutting out, then collaging, then sewing, and making these works. This work here, when you open this folded book, it becomes a quilt, and it's a wall-size quilt, and every single part has either a Van Dyck or a Cyanotype component. I continue the series, and at this point, like I said before, I'm talking about childhood memories. And I wanted to embody the whole idea of childhood and translate it to motherhood, and to metaphorically speak about womanhood. So I started working with the dress form as a metaphor for being a woman. So I developed these doll-size works. These are still for me in the category of artist books. And for those of you who are not too familiar with what an artist book is basically treating the book as an art form. And to me, these artist books are books in the sense that they have text, they have a storyline. When you are, not in this one, but in others, when you are opening lids, you're opening pages, you're turning pages, but there's always a narrative in them. So I continued with the dress shape, and early on I started to, like you saw in the first photograph, I altered as an etched photograph. I started using thread and using and sewing into the prints and bringing other elements. So I continue to do this, and I still do that in my work. And probably that's what is the most, I guess, what my work, if you see my work, you will identify it by all these little things that I do and add to it. I mentioned that I grew up in Ecuador, so a big influence in my work was oops, I almost lose it. I was influenced by all the artisan work that I grew up seeing, knitting and basketry making. And then also I was influenced by the woman that I grew up with, my mother, my grandmother, my aunts, who taught me to sew, to knit, to do crochet. So I wanted to incorporate all these things into my work. And what you see here is traces of that. And I'm not only adding thread, but I'm also bringing in other materials like raffia, like linen, and you will see in other works that I bring in other things like that you make basketry with. I discovered that using veneer was a very useful tool for me. I wanted to be able to mold the wood into a different shape. My first works were more straight edges and thicker, but at this point, I'm able to transfer my the use of cyanotypes into a more a softer material. This work here is made with veneer. The skirt is veneer. And here also, there's an artist book. It has the text. There are layers of information. You can turn it, you can move it, you can open, you can close. Okay, so this one, again, I'm still very interested in combining the natural materials. So the wood is not only a commercialized finished product, but also I'm bringing in now branches and reeds that I'm manipulating and molding to continue my design. So all the works that I'm going to be showing right now are a little bit mixed in terms of the theme. A lot of them, like I said before, are about childhood memories. A lot of them are about leaving a legacy to my children. Having been brought up in a different country where I mostly got my cultural background from, it was very important to me that my children would know where they came from. And a way for me to translate that to them was to bring in all that information from my past. This piece here is called Back in Time. And I am also using negatives, old negatives. Most of my work, the work that I use, the photographic work that I use are photographs that I have taken myself. But in this case, and in the few other works that I'm going to be showing, I decided to use old negatives and old photographs, old family photographs. Ecuador has always been present in my work. And this work is about that. It's about my family. On the book that opens up, there are images of different historical events that took place in Ecuador. And I was always interested in combining hard materials with soft materials. And at one point, to me, wood and metal were more male materials, and thread and raffia and things like that were more female materials, in the sense that, and I guess how historically they were used and how they were portrayed in history books and in general. And so I wanted to combine both of them. In my head, I wanted to combine both of them, and also I wanted to make a statement that soft is also strong, and hard could also be tender. So this book is bringing those things together. I am purposely using thread to keep the structure together. And, but when I made this book, less was being talked and said about the so-called crafts and feminine work, or women's work rather. It was I see, so many years have passed, and I see now, for example, sewing being incorporated into paintings, into canvases, and there's more of a crossover now. When I was making these works, it was more separated, it was like more, how do I say this? Women's work wasn't supported as much as it is now. But anyways, we can get more into depth about this later. So continuing, this is another work where I am sewing the wood and combining these two materials and these two areas that I'm talking about. This book is about my experiences as a child, but also having to live the country where I grew up for political reasons, and witnessing a lot of pain and death. So this box is called Layers of Memory, and when you open this, so this is the first lid, the first page. You open it again, and you get to this part here where the story of violence and grief is revealed. I'm using cyanotypes and Van Dyks in this one also. And this work is called My Mother and Two Aunts Taught Me to Be an Artist. And this is talking about what I was saying before, elevating sewing and knitting and crocheting to the level of sculpture and painting, the traditional areas that have been prevalent in society, and talking about what is fine arts. So I really wanted to make sure that I was bringing in all these things to express all the importance that they had. Again, I'm cutting into the wood, I'm sewing it, I'm putting photographs in, and then my work is also characteristic of having layers. You have to really peel off the surface. You have to look for things. Not everything is up front. You have to do a little bit of an investigation to see what I'm talking about. And so this one, you open this lid, you see this lid covering this part here, and then when you open it, these objects are revealed. This work is called Nourishment Structure, and this is about giving birth. This is when I was pregnant with my first child, and I wanted to celebrate that. So, metaphorically, this is a womb structure, this is the placenta, and this is an actual photograph of him being an embryo. This work is called Remembering Mi Abuelita Carlota, remembering my grandmother. And again, I'm talking about my culture, my family, where I come from. I grew up in a very interesting household. My grandfather was um, a socialist, and my grandmother was a pious woman. Um, so this work talks about her and how she kept herself almost in a drawer, but yet she was respected for her beliefs, and she lived a very Catholic life, even though my grandfather did not go to church ever. So this one is in homage of her. And here I have some of my grandfather's handwriting, and here some images of my grandmother. I grew up in their household, so they pretty much brought me up together with my mom. This is called a container for Sebastian's umbilical cord. And literally, this is Sebastian's umbilical cord. My son's is the end that is left on the mom, and that dries up and pops out after a while. And here is the image of his of the sonogram. This work is made out of basketry. I make everything in my books. Only the found objects are bought or somebody else did them, but you know, I make everything in them. So I was very happy to recreate some of the handcrafts from my home country. Different, of course, because I didn't follow any pattern or anything. And in this little container, and the bottom part has mung beans. And I don't know if you have heard a rain stick, but you know, when you move a rain stick, you know, when you move it, it makes this beautiful sound. So I wanted to recreate that here. And it doesn't make, of course, the same sound because it's very shallow and small. But when you shake it, you know, it gives you, it makes you think of a rattle of sorts. When I was making this work, I was also thinking about family. This book is called An Unfinished History. Oh boy, a book for Sebastian. This is also for my son. And here I made all the two families from, I photographed images of photographs I had and then sanitized in Van Dyke's of the two families. There are two families on two sides, his mother's and his father's. So this is a quilt that when you open up also is wall size. This book is also about childhood memories and growing up in Ecuador. And you see in a lot of these works this image of this girl peeking, and to me that's a very important image because it is me when I was 3 years old. I went to I moved back to, I went to Ecuador with my mom, and then I didn't grow up with my father. So I met him when I was 3 years old, and my mother sent me to New York to meet with my father. And this picture is the picture that was taken that day out of a tourist card. And I find it to be a very compelling picture of this little girl that is so afraid and scared. And I like using it in these works that talk about that time. Here, another work. It's called Postcards from My Ancestors. And these are all family members from my mother's side. I also took pictures of the back part of the old photographs and printed them on the wood in the container. This is an homage to my grandfather. He was not only a champion for social change, but he was also a bibliophile. And his entire life, he worked. This was his job. He worked collecting books, selling them, buying and selling old books, Ecuadorian books, and he amassed this huge collection of books. And this writing here is a little legacy that he left me before he passed. And it just saying, I guess, telling me that all his books are mine. And this was a very special book because he passed a year after I moved to the United States, and it was very, very, very hard for me not to be able to go to his funeral or not to see him his last days. And it took me maybe like 10 years to make this book. I just couldn't deal with the fact that he was gone and that I was not there to see him go. But also his legacy was very profound in my art making. My love for books, for paper, for materials came from him. I grew up in his bookstore, and just the smell of old books whenever I go anywhere just brings memories. And I guess that's why I love paper. I love old paper, and I have incorporated old books into many of my works, but that's where it comes from. A few years later, I made this container, and this one is a container for Andrea's umbilical cord. So it's the same idea as the one I made for my son, but this one is for her. And same, here's her little cord, umbilical cord, and underneath this part here lifts up, and there's also a layer of mung beans underneath. And there's another thing in this one, that there's a hidden message for her that I wrote. I don't even remember what I wrote in it, but I haven't opened it ever since. And the idea is that she will get this at one point in her life and find the message if she's curious enough, although I think I have told her. Okay, so as you have seen, my connection with alternative processes went extended beyond the two-dimensional surface, and really, to me, the use of it was a means to an end more than a finished product on its own. So I continue to use alternative processes throughout my work, and I developed a new series. This time, these are called the Paper Doll series, Las Cucas Paper Dolls. So this was the first one that I made, and again, here I'm still using wood, I'm still using paper, and I moved on to, like, this is a piece of bark that I found somewhere, and I put cyanotype on it, and this work became that. This series continues on the idea of using the skirt as a describe metaphorically to talk about womanhood. This one is about my grandmother. So the base of her image is a cyanotype, but I don't know if you can see it, but all the blue is sewing, it's embroidery. And there's thread everywhere. Let's see, can I make it bigger? Let me try. No, I guess not. Oh no. Oh. So there's embroidery here, lots of sewing, and I continue to incorporate little milagros, little charms that remind me of not only of my culture, but also of Mexican culture. Charms are little offerings that you present to a saint in a church, and usually they are to thank or to ask for favors. I just think that this is such an incredible way of expressing, your beliefs, that I have adopted it for many years and incorporated into my work. So this one, okay, that's my, so I continued, so I made a whole series on these Cucas paper dolls, and most of them, well, the ones that I selected utilize cyanotypes and bindikes. This one is called Niña de Chiapas. I traveled to Mexico, and I found I was walking through a plaza, and there were this group of children, and there was this little girl that was actually, she probably was no more than 11 or 12, and she had her sister on her back, and she was taking care of her. So actually, I took a picture of her, and that image has developed, and it has become many different artworks throughout my life. I have used a lot of different sources. I have printed on tea bags. I have printed on well, on paper. And the tea bags is interesting because nowadays, it's a very common material. Like a lot of people are using it. But when I remember that when I discovered it, I was like so happy with the results, such an absorbent paper, and or not paper, medium that gave such amazing results. This one, I can't remember how the name is. Well, and I am a collector. I love to collect things when I'm on my walks or when I'm on my trips. And this is coconut bark. I remember I took a trip to Florida, and I had that, so I just kept it, and I brought it out when this work called for it. As many of you know, you just keep things, and when you feel that they are needed, they just come out. Again, this work is about childhood memories, being a woman, behind curtains kind of thing. This one is called Tide, and I was printing on tissue paper, it gives such a beautiful result. And at this point, so the background is an old print, and here is a piece of crochet that I had from my grandmother. So I'm always bringing in little bits and pieces of things that combined make sense in the work. The text that you see here is from the Codice Mendoza, and I have used that text throughout my work repeatedly, and I still use it. And this is a book, a manuscript with writings about the Aztecs and their daily life, written by Spaniards after the conquest. And to me, that's just a reminder of where I come from, and how, in a way, things have changed, but they haven't really changed in their essence, because we're still seeing a lot of the same oppression and all the same disadvantages, in society. So I always keep it there and use it as a reminder. So I also experimented at the beginning. I said that I was looking for many different ways of using photography in my work. And I tapped into everything I could. And as most of you probably have done it, Polaroid transfers, right? At one point or the other, we're curious about, and that amazing, beautiful, delicate surface that, when you peel it, becomes. So I experimented with that too. And I brought it in later on, when I was making this piece. The image here was probably made many years before I made this work. But and I still have a lot of images like this, that are waiting to be used one of these days. So this is Polaroid transfer. And like I said before too, the use of alternative processes to me is a means to an end. I just love how they look and how they can be used for my different projects. So this here is, again, a Polaroid transfer that I later used in this work. And here is the start of another body of work where you can peek through the skirt and under the skirt, talking about layers. So all the works that I've shown you before are small in size. They're not bigger than maybe this by this. And then I decided that I wanted to make more than life-size works. And this installation was the first one of a series also, where the skirts are actually more than life size. They're 8 feet in height and around 8 feet in diameter. And they're all paper and prints. All here is printed on. And if you go, so you can go around the skirt, and in the back side, there's a little bit of an opening, and you can go in the skirt. And when you go in, here you can see it. And when you go in, you see these huge 15 by 19 or 13 by 19 portraits, cyanotypes, portraits of children. And this work is called Innocencia, Innocence. And it's part of a group of 3 where I'm talking about humanity, and I'm talking about how on the outside, how life should be for children, happy and stimulating and protected and everything. And then on the inside, I'm talking about reality, how many children go through this horrible reality of being abused, of not having anything to eat, of being in war, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So this skirt is, on the outside, you have drawings of children that are, living their innocence. And on the inside, you have these children that are staring at you. And below, there are writings of them saying things like, I don't have anything to eat, or the bombing killed my mom yesterday, or things like that. This is the third on that series. This one is called Experiencia, experience. And again, I'm thinking about old age. And on the outside, you should be, you have lived your life, you should be tranquil, calm, you have accomplished things, you have done things, it's time for you to be content and be happy and peaceful. Peaceful is the word I'm looking for. And around the skirt, there's the writing of Ecclesiastes that was made into a song, a time to be, the song. I can't remember the title of it right. A time to be born, a time to be, well, I cannot think of the name right now, but so that's what's written on the outside. And then again, you can go under the skirt, and when you're inside, you see all these faces of older people, and at the bottom you see images of the horrors of humanity. So it's talking about what should life be, right? And how life isn't, and all the terrible things that happen in society. And so this is pretty much my experience with alternative printmaking in a large scale. Like I said before, I still use the process to aid into my installations or my sculptures, and actually having this presentation has really moved me to come back to it, and to start making again work that is more geared toward alternative processes. So thank you, Dale. So I wanted to mention that photography is always in my radar and will always be in my radar. In the last few years, I have concentrated on making prints. And these prints that I'm showing you, I pulled from as a sampler of the use of photography. So photography continues to amaze me, and I bring it into other mediums. These are all, well, they're different. There's silk screen. These are all mostly silk screens. Yeah, but I also bring photography into my etchings and to my reliefs. And to talk a little bit about the future, because I know that you guys are probably interested in thinking and asking, okay, so what now? So I have started a series of still lifes that I started maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And what I want to do now is actually use all those, make all of these into negatives, and they're going to be cyanotypes actually, or Van Dyks. Although I have discovered that cyanotypes last longer. Maybe my formulas for Van Dyks were not that precise, but some of my Van Dyks have discolored with time, and maybe this group might be able to help me. I should talk to people about the Van Dyks and how to make them, more long lasting. So these are samples of negatives that I want to use for my new work, upcoming work, hopefully not too long from now. And this is my presentation. I don't know how we're doing with time. And here's my information in case anyone has more questions or wants to contact me or wants to see more of my work. But I guess I would open it up now to questions.
Yeah, thank you, Sandra. If anybody has questions, you can put them into the chat and I'll read them out, or you can use the raise hand function and that way you can ask them yourself. And if anybody has some useful Van Dyke Brown information to share with Sandra.
Yes.
Also, we get a transcript of the chat as well. So if you want to put anything in there that might not be a question, but a comment that you'd like Sandra to see, we'll save the chat afterwards and I could share it with her. So feel free to put not only questions, but comments in there as well. I have to say, I really liked your incorporation of text into your work, and also that, like you mentioned it a couple of times, like the layering in some of the early work with the skirts where you could just see a face peeking out. Mm-hmm. I really like that layering.
Thank you.
Yeah, and almost like a partially hidden form.
Yeah.
That you really have to think about. Yeah, I really like that.
Thank you.
All right.
No questions.
No
all
questions?
Right.
Wow, you guys.
I talked too much, maybe.
I think you told us everything. All right. That was an excellent talk.
Thank you.
All right. No, that was really great. And I'd like to thank you, Sandra, and thank you to everyone who came out tonight. We are slowly archiving all of these talks. So this one will be on our Vimeo page probably within, I would say, a couple of weeks. But also check our Vimeo page if you're interested in seeing any of the talks we've had in the past.
Okay. Yeah, someone actually had asked me about seeing the archive, like going back to listen to past
ones,
presentations.
Yeah, if you go to Vimeo, their search is a little bit wonky, but if you put the Halide Project in and check off people, because I think you can check off video or other parameters for whatever you're searching, but you have to make sure people is checked. And then the Halide Project will show up, and then you click on that and it brings you to like all of our talks.
Okay.
So yeah, we have some that we did very early on, and the more recent ones we're kind of working our way back, and hopefully within a month or two we'll have all of them up there. So,
oh, nice. I would love to see those.
Yeah, yep. And I'll let you know when yours is up too, so you can share it with anyone who may have missed it tonight.
Yeah. Thank you. Oh, thank you, Linda. Thank you, Melanie.
Yeah, I like the idea of looking at books in a different way too, where it's not necessarily strictly like your typical book with pages that get flipped.
Yeah.
Broader definition.
Yeah, the thing is that I mean, I love books. I also make traditional books, but I was so hooked up to the idea of just completely changing the concept and making it something else. That was very enticing to me.
Yeah, I love it. It's like the book as a vessel.
Yes. Yes.
Whatever form. Yeah.
Yeah. Like yeah. Yeah. And you know, something I was, because we still have time, right? I was just thinking about something that I said about feminine works and male works, which I always get in trouble because I guess I didn't explain it. As I'm thinking back on it, I don't think I really expressed myself correctly on it, and probably, well, I hope I didn't upset people with this, by the way I said it. You know, back like we're talking about maybe 25 years ago, women's work wasn't as accepted as it is now. I don't know if you share that thought with me or not, but anything, and I went through this, anything that had any hint of feminine work, because I don't know how else to call it, was rejected. Like I was rejected to so many shows, and when I saw the work, everything was painterly or sculpturally, in the way of male dominated art scenario, if that makes any sense. I see now, and I love it, that books has always had the sewing, obviously, because you sew the pages and you sew the bindings, but I'm talking more overtly, and as a medium, now, like I started drawing with thread, and when people didn't do that. So again, I'm happy now that people are actually finally accepting this beautiful way of making work as a fine art, not only as a craft. And there's nothing wrong with crafts, but is more the way that society thinks about the work and kind of puts it down as something that is not as important. So anyways, I always had a problem with that, because I grew up with seeing my grandmother and my aunts and everybody, kneading and making these beautiful things. And to me, that was always fine art. But when I came to this country, I was so surprised to learn that it was not appreciated. It was appreciated at one level, but not at the level of the fine arts, which was what I was being introduced by going to school, in the university. People didn't really respect it. So I always had a problem with that. And I being the rebel that I am, I always wanted to make sure to go against the grain, I would say. But anyways, I just wanted to mention that, because I don't, I don't think that I put my thoughts well when I was talking about that.
It's interesting though, and it's definitely something to think about, and think about why. So is it that like the crafts or the skills that women historically had are more utilitarian, and so they're not appreciated or elevated to that fine art status because they're, you're making things for people to wear or people to eat or what have you. And
yeah,
that could be part of it, but it's something to think about for sure.
Yeah, that's a big part of it. But yeah, and yeah, it is a part of it.
I think there's been a focus on crafts lately too, and kind of just more broadly an elevation, if that's the right word, of craft to the fine art status. You're seeing a lot more recognition of crafts.
Yes, and that is so great, because as you know, it takes so much time and so much effort, and it's yeah, and it's beautiful.
All right. If there are no other questions, comments, I'd just like to thank you once again.
Good to read your words, Maddie. I wasn't say good to see you, but thanks for coming tonight. It's yeah, thank you so much for being here.
All right. Thanks to everyone who came, and thanks again to Sandra, and we'll see you.
Thank you, Dale.
Yeah, you're welcome. It was our pleasure.
Okay. Bye.
Thanks, Maddie. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks to everyone.